I literally sound like a frog, but I'm filming this anyways. Hi everyone, my name's Ellie, and if you couldn't already tell, I'm sick. In case you're wondering, yes, my bookshelves are still behind me. They're just covered in all of these like white tarp sort of things. And that's just because I'm using a humidifier in my room to try to clear my sinuses and get me to feel better. But due to past experiences, I have realized that humidifiers ruin books. They make the pages all damaged and wrinkled, and it's not worth it. So my mom and I put these up to protect my books, and as I am still using the humidifier in my room at night, I have not taken these down. Guess you're gonna have to get used to this plain white background. But anyways, today I am filming my first ever book discussion type of video. I'm pretty nervous about this because I have a lot of unpopular opinions about this book, but we're just gonna go with it. If you didn't catch on to the title, I am talking about The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I'm just gonna throw in a quick disclaimer before I start even talking about this book. Basically, whatever I say about this book, it is not a personal attack on you if you disagree with any of my opinions about this. I am in no way trying to call anyone out for what they think about this book and how it differs from my opinion. This is just the opinion of one person out of the thousands of people who have read this book or wrote an opinion for it on Goodreads or something. And if you disagree with anything I have to say about this book, that's fine. It's your opinion, okay? With that out of the way, I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I gave this book 1.5 stars. The only reason I finished this book was because it was a challenge for my Bookopoly game. In fact, as soon as I finish filming this video, I'm going to go ahead and donate this book because I don't want it on my shelf anymore. But yeah, I have a lot of stuff to talk about for this book, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started before this video takes a tremendously long time. Just so we're clear, I am keeping all of this content non-spoiler, so even if you haven't read this book and want to see what my opinions are, that's totally fine. I'm not really going to say anything that's going to give away any sort of plot twist or something. So one of my biggest problems with this book is actually going to be the first thing I am going to be talking about, but that's just sort of the idea of the plot. When I first heard about this book, I heard so many people say that it had such a eerie and unpredictable sort of interesting plot that really fit the story. But for me, I felt that it was so wild, in fact, that it really had no plot. The story in The Cruel Prince really didn't feel like it was connecting or really going anywhere in general. And the focus was really jumping around all over the place, and I really didn't see how all of it connected in the end. I just found that a lot of this book was based around bickering teenagers, which all around doesn't add to any sort of story. And there are also a lot of family fights that take place in this book. Not necessarily between two families, but just inside a certain family. But again, it really didn't take the story anywhere, and they didn't even mention it any other time in the book. It's just, oh, this happened. I feel like I hate you now. All right, now I'm gonna go to a party. And there really was no build up to any of these fights. It just felt really stupid and insignificant, and nothing that really took the story anywhere. And after all that was happening, even with the twisted sort of government that is introduced in this book, the characters are going after the exact same thing that they wanted at the beginning of the book, with no regards to the recent events that have been happening or anything. There is literally no change in their behavior, even after everything that they've been through. And personally, I just feel that that demonstrated how really little character growth that there was in this book. But that does kind of link into the next topic that I want to talk about anyways. When I was reading reviews for this book on Goodreads, I actually found a lot of people that were saying how much they liked the aspect of a human telling this story. Since it is centered in the Fae world, I read a lot of reviews saying that they really liked the journey that our main character Jude was taking throughout this book, and how we got to see her go to this fairy school and take strides there to sort of further learn about this fairy world. But I really thought that was poorly done in this book. Like I mentioned before, I thought that the school scenes were just really insignificant and there to just take up space if something wasn't really happening, which ended up being like half the book anyways. Again, it just didn't really take the story anywhere, and as far as the growth that we see from our main character as she's attending this school, I really just didn't see any of it. It was just a bunch of stupid teenagers getting into fights that literally went nowhere. And there was just no adjustment to this new fairy world. At least none that I read about. And that was actually something that, combined with a whole other bunch of aspects, made me realize something about the setting of this book as well. While a lot of people are saying that the setting was really great and really put together, I really couldn't get like a good grip on the world. Something specific I want to point out is that there were actually quite a few introductions to a bunch of fantastical creatures and elements and stuff in this world that could have been elaborated on, but they just weren't. They just were there. And rather than giving any sort of explanation on what these fantastical beings actually were, it just focused on drinking and parties instead. I actually think I counted at least 4 or 5 different parties in this book. And I keep coming back to this topic, but a lot of them didn't just do anything. They were just there. They took up space where the plot could have been. Alright, that was really mean, but I just had to put that out there. And I mean the characters too. Man, did they really fall flat. In so many of the reviews I read, I heard that all of these characters were really well fleshed out and complicated and really added something to the book. Hell no, they didn't. The only character I thought was remotely okay was Jude's older sister. Her older sister, her name is Vivi by the way, is really just a sassy character who despises the fairy, even though she is one of them, and she just wants to go back to the regular world and be with her girlfriend. And I applaud her for that. I think Vivi was the only part of this book that led me to give it a 1.5 stars instead of just a plain 1 star. Vivi, you have saved this book from total annihilation, and I am so proud of you. But other than her, they all sucked. All of these characters that I read about were really one-sided, and I couldn't connect to who they really were. All of the fairy princes and royalty that I read about in here were just complete garbage people. And also, the main character Jude had a twin sister named Taryn, who I just felt was really annoying and didn't need to be there at all. And then there's Jude, the barest character of them all. What I really hated about Jude is that she thought she pretty much owned the place, even though it's not her world to begin with. And she never even thought about just taking a step back and thinking, maybe I'm not all knowledgeable about this strange world that I'm still barely trying to understand. But hell, I'm the main character, so I know everything. And on top of all of that, she is just refusing to take the responsibility of the consequences of her actions. But when you think about it, about like half of that really isn't her fault because the book doesn't make her take her consequences anyways. She insults Fairy in the higher power just because she thinks she can. She gets in a literal brutal fight with her twin sister because they like the same boy. That also had no development, by the way. And then she just expects her sister to go right back to trusting her again, even though, again, the book lets her get away with that. I just cannot handle her stupidity and her arrogance. And people keep saying that she is such an interesting character because she is forced to comply with the fairy and she doesn't have a choice. But that's not what I saw. She doesn't hate that she's living with the fairy. She hates that she is a human living with them. She wants to destroy that human part inside of her, even though being human was a really big part of her life before she was taken away. That is where her roots are, but she keeps denying that, and it is driving me crazy. And as for the part where they think she doesn't have a choice in the matter, I am calling BS on that. We have actually just finished reading a book called The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka in our Advanced Language Arts class. And one of the biggest themes in that story is that there is no you don't have a choice. There is always a choice. And if you think that there isn't, you are 1, letting society basically control you, and 2, you have to take the responsibility of that decision to not make a choice. And Jude wasn't doing that. I'm sorry, that's just something that I really had to address. Okay, before this gets any more off topic, I do have one last thing that I want to talk about. The plot twist at the end. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it, so for those of you that have not read this book, don't worry. But long story short, it was not a good plot twist. Now, I myself didn't actually guess it, but when it actually happened in the book, I was just sitting there thinking, ugh, how did this book get so off track to make this seem reasonable? Because that's what it was. The explanation for the plot twist just felt so out there. And it was connected to literally nothing else that I read out of this book. It was pulled from nothing, essentially. And yet I was seeing so much praise for it and how excited everyone was for the next book because of that twist. I'm just like, but why? It wasn't all that exciting. But yes, I am not picking up the second book, and I hope I never see this book on my shelf ever again. I'm exhausted from just talking about it. Alright, that was it for this discussion video. I'm really sorry if you didn't like this video. It was just something I had to get off my chest and talk about before I unhaul this book. Alright, I guess that's all I have to say. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!